Hello. I don't go to many gigs these days, but tonight I'm going to my first gig since the lockdown started. I was just thinking last night about which bands I last saw, and I can't quite remember but which one was the precise last one. But I did see Little Steven and the Disciples of Soul. This is a more recent album, Soulfire, from 2017, so it might have been 2018. My God, 4 years ago. Or it could have been this band, Inhaler, which you may have heard of. This young fella here is the son of Bono, and it was a really great gig at the O2, Academy O2 in Birmingham. They were really just like early U2, and I remember seeing U2 just before I think they released the second album, October, and they had incredible energy and drive. It was a really exciting gig, and Inhaler, cut from the same cloth, a really good band. This album took about a year or two before it actually was released after the gig, so they'd been touring for quite a bit. But anyway, I'm not seeing them tonight. I'm seeing two classic rock bands, neither of which I'm a huge fan of. The first one is this band here, the headliners, Deep Purple. So, my relationship with Deep Purple, I've got a big pile of albums here, which are kind of a big chunk of them that I have. Where did I start? I think I started my Deep Purple career, can you believe it, a career, with this compilation, 24 Karat Purple. This came out in, up to 19, hang on a second, it's on the Purple label, got a little of a plastic cover here, little plastic insert. 10 minutes later, I still don't know what year it came out. But anyway, there you go. Let me tell you what's on it though, and why it was such a successful compilation, and why it had kind of such an impact. We've got here Woman from Tokyo. Let me just put those albums down for a second. Woman from Tokyo, Fireball, from the title track of a 1971 album, Strange Kind of Woman, which is from Made in Japan, which is this double live album, which is one of the most famous double live rock albums of all time. Never Before, which from Machine Head, Black Knight, which was a single, but it was also, this particular version here was from Live in Japan concerts. I don't think it's on this version of the album, might be on a later one, can't remember. Speed King from Deep Purple in Rock, Smoke on the Water, of course, which everyone knows, and even I, as a non-musician, can play that riff a little bit on a guitar, only on a single string though, so forgive me for my hopelessness. And Child in Time, which is the famous for the organ, but even more famous for it is for Ian Gillan's kind of screaming, tuneful screaming voice. So I started with 24 Karat Purple, then I went back into and bought various albums. I bought the first album much later, much later. Who Do We Think We Are? Deep Purple in Rock, which is kind of their breakthrough album. This one on the Harvest label. I think this is a first press actually. Yeah, I think it's a first press, but there you go, from 1970 on the Harvest label. Pink Floyd's label, of course. And for those interested, Barclay James Harvest at the time. But anyway, Deep Purple in Rock. Never really liked Deep Purple in Rock so much. Bit too raw for my tastes. Nice cover though, isn't it? Nice cover. Nice inside as well. I won't go through all of these, but just pick up a couple of highlights. Yeah, I got a couple of earlier other live albums, Machine Head, which is the one which introduced Smoke on the Water, and Highway Star, which is superb. Burn, Stormbringer. Ritchie Blackmore and Ian Gillan had left by this time, as they had by Burn. More of that in a minute. Right, just forget I said that, because we know that Ritchie Blackmore left after the album Stormbringer, and then was replaced by Tommy Bolin for Come Taste the Band. Funky Junction play a tribute. I think that's got some famous musicians on, but it's kind of a Funky Junction, not really sure who they are. Come Taste the Band, which came after Ritchie Blackmore left the band, and so on and so forth. Anyway, Deep Purple. I used to have a college friend way back when who used to be a huge fan of Ritchie Blackmore. Thought he was like the best rock guitarist around, and he may well have been, of course. And I did see him in the 1970s with his band Rainbow on the Rainbow Rising tour. Pretty close to the stage at Newcastle City Hall. It was absolutely fantastically exciting gig. And true to form, Ritchie Blackmore smashed his guitar, or smashed a guitar, I think as part of the encore, or was it just before the encore? I can't quite remember. But yeah, it was an incredibly exciting gig. It was a whole lot of fun. But this college friend of mine was like really, really into him, and he kept encouraging me to buy more Deep Purple albums. And I never saw them live, as I say, other than Ritchie Blackmore. I did see Ian Gillan's band around 1980, maybe 81 or something like that. But I never saw Deep Purple until about 4 or 5 years ago, and I went to a gig on their tour which they called The Long Goodbye. And I thought that if I don't see them now, I'm never going to see them. So I went along, and I was incredibly impressed. Now, there's no doubt about it. I mean, Ritchie Blackmore's long gone, of course. Steve Morse was on guitar, and I understand that at the time he had arthritis in his hand, so that might have been his last tour of any sort, even though he was younger than the other members of Purple on stage. John Lord had died, of course, earlier. Ian Gillan was there, unsteady on his feet. I think he's had a stroke, or he'd had a stroke a couple of years earlier, but had recovered reasonably well. Still had a good voice though, but I think what was really, really good about the whole experience really was the drummer Ian Pace and Roger Glover on bass guitar. There's sometimes, I'm not a fan of heavy metal. I've seen a few heavy metal bands, but it's not my thing. And one of the things that distinguish Deep Purple from a lot of hard rock and heavy metal bands, even including maybe Led Zeppelin, is that I don't know whether I can explain this well enough, but the rhythm section of Deep Purple really swings. There's something about that bluesiness, of course, but it kind of has this forward momentum that is always present in the music, and it's like the rhythm section has got an iron grip on the music, and you're left with a feeling that this is a band who's ultra professional. They are absolutely on top of their instruments. The sound is always, I believe it's always great. I mean, the live albums mostly sound great, the ones that have been released over the years. But they are just so precise, but so kind of warm sounding as well. So you're kind of thinking, wow, I'm in the presence of really, really skilled musicians here who know exactly what they're doing, and it worked really, really well. And I didn't miss Ritchie Blackmore a bit. So word got out. I thought that was going to be the last tour, and I just thought a few weeks ago I got wind of this latest tour. Goodness knows what they're going to be like, because they're going to be another 3, 4, maybe 5 years older than they were last time, and they were a little bit, on the cusp of retirement then. But I thought one last time I'll give it a go, and I'm going with a friend tonight. So yeah, really, really great band. My favourite, Dave's Faves, my favourite album by them, doesn't include Ian Gillan or Richie Blackmore, and it is Come Taste the Band. I talked about the way the band swings. I mean, when they released this particular album, they had a new guitarist called Tommy Bolin. Of course, David Coverdale's the singer, went on to Whitesnake, as we probably all know. Glenn Hughes on bass and vocals, but they really kind of swing on this album. It's really, really good. It opens with big fast track, Coming Home. Lady Luck is kind of languid but powerful. Getting Tighter is like really fast, fantastic riffing. Dealers out of the same mold. Going on. Love Child, This Time Around, which is a Glenn Hughes kind of ballad, and then went into a long instrumental section. And You Keep On Moving has this fantastic bass introduction, and there's great bass decay. There's big bass note at the very end that finishes it off. Absolutely superb. This is a reissue because this old friend of mine, I sold my original copy of Come Taste the Band to him, so that's a fairly recent reissue. Anyway, Deep Purple, I'm looking forward to it. But interestingly, they have a support band that I also saw. I saw this band. I didn't see just members of it. I saw this band in the 1970s as well. I think it was 1977 or 1978. And the band is Blue Oyster Cult. And I saw them, I can't remember what the name of the tour was, but it was a tour where they had a fantastically extravagant laser show. And I knew Don't Fear the Reaper. And I'd heard a couple of the earlier albums because I had another old friend who lives in London now. And I didn't know him at this particular point, but he later got me into Blue Oyster Cult. But anyway, I saw this band, I saw Blue Oyster Cult, and I found that the music was rather slight. Wasn't quite, in fact, the whole experience was like, wow, wasn't that a great spectacle? It wasn't really about the music at all. But I wasn't that impressed. But this old friend of mine who's in London came up to Birmingham about 4 years ago now, and maybe 3 years ago. And we went off to Nottingham Rock City to see Blue Oyster Cult. And we thought, well, the tickets were about 15 quid. And again, what an absolutely superb show. Again, that same feeling is that this is a band with a vast back catalogue, great music within that particular catalogue, and completely aced it on stage. They were superb, even in a small venue, no lasers this time. It was really, really good. And I came out of that gig thinking, wow, I've just seen a classic rock concert, just old school. Bands not playing on the edge of their ability, not trying to overly excite the crowd, to trying to mask some of their musical shortcomings. This is a band who really know what they're doing, and it was restrained, but it was really, really powerful. Blue Oyster Cult are supporting Purple tonight, so that's going to be really interesting. As for Blue Oyster Cult, the first couple of albums are good. Blue Oyster Cult, Tyranny and Mutation. What a fantastic cover that is, and look at that, what an absolutely fantastic cover. It's got an inside one, inside one there as well. And they went on, and Secret Treaties was the third, and Agents of Fortune came along, which had Don't Fear the Reaper on it. Nice cover as well. Really good. But apart from that gig 3-4 years ago, I always felt on those first couple of albums that the riffage, and I think I said this a little bit about Dave Davies and the Kinks, is that the riffage seems rather slight. Now, the first couple of albums have got this psychedelic flavour as well, so it's not really hard rock as such. It's kind of on the cusp of moving into more riffage. That would be, more associated with hard rock and then heavy metal, but very tuneful, And they've got, as I say, in their catalogue, they've got some really, really good songs. So I'm expecting that they'll probably get 45 minutes to an hour tonight. And I expect it'll be full of their so-called hits. So I'm looking forward to that one as well. So yeah, my first gig for about 3 years. Kind of looking forward to it. It should be good. And I'm sure it's going to be memorable. I might post on the end of this a review of the gig if it goes well. But anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in a moment to talk about the gig, or I'll see you next time. Cheers. Bye. Well, here's my quick review of the gig last night in Birmingham. So Deep Purple and Blue Oyster Cult. So firstly, we had shit seats. For some reason, the arena layout when I ordered the tickets looked like we were about, somewhere between 30 and 40 degrees from, say, the stage, looking from the left-hand side up on kind of lower level but elevated. But I don't think they sold enough tickets, so the whole stage seemed to be moved forward maybe 20 meters. And so we were almost had a side view, and it was partially obscured as well. But the place wasn't packed. I'll come back to that in a second. So we saw Blue Oyster Cult from these crappy seats, and the first thing it's worth saying is that the bass frequencies were just far too loud. And if you know Blue Oyster Cult, you know that some of the guitar playing by Buck Dharma is it's kind of very intricate. It's kind of very precise. It's normally very, very clear. No big meaty chords from him. It's all kind of fiddly, twiddly little stuff, and it's very appealing for that in that regard. But it was almost completely drowned out by the lower frequencies from where we were sitting anyway. So that was a disappointment. They played for an hour. Played, as far as I can tell, kind of all their hits: "Burning for You," "Godzilla," "Don't Fear the Reaper," of course. Stairway to the Stars, excuse me. I'm getting mixed up with AC/DC. Yeah, Stairway to the Stars. So that was, they were good, but I was disappointed, really good. But anyway, the place wasn't full. There were blocks that were curtained off towards the back, and halfway down from the stage to the back, there was a couple of areas where there were quite a few, mostly empty seats actually in the top sections, and we moved to one of those for when Deep Purple came on. What can you say about Purple? Professional, no doubt about it. Good sound, actually good sound, so it was really good. They've got a new guitarist whose name, the band weren't introduced to the audience, but hardcore fans will know the guitarist's name. I don't, doesn't matter. Ian Pace and Roger Glover on fine form as usual. Don Airy on keyboards, really good. But he did a lot of filling in for the rest of the band. He had two really lengthy solo sections. One of them that introduced what was the run-up to Perfect Strangers. So a little bit too much, but very, 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 very able. Ian Gillan, not so unsteady on his feet actually. He was okay. He'd grown his hair since last time. Had a decent stage presence, moving around quite a bit. But his voice is, it's hard for a lead singer, isn't it? I mean, drummers are very physical, so it's hard for drummers to keep playing forever. But lead singers have got to be right up there. I mean, you can play the bass guitar, lead guitar, keyboards until you drop dead, but it's hard to carry off the rock god persona on stage. And Gillan's voice is he just hasn't got the lung capacity of that he had as a younger man, and so his screams were kind of half-baked. Some of his singing was a little bit kind of, if it's the right phrase, a little bit behind the beat, or where it should have been. But fair dues, he gave it all. In terms of the band overall, I think they played it really safe. There was a couple of numbers from a recent album called Whoosh, which I don't think I have. Uncommon Man from Rapture of the Deep, I think. I've got it, but I can't remember the name of the title. But that was a fairly recent album as well. I think that was the album they were touring last time, well, the first time I saw them, in fact. But they played safe elsewhere, opened with Highway Star, Pictures of Home, followed. Of course, they closed out the set with Smoke on the Water. They played Hush, Black Knight. They did Space Truckin'. They did Lazy, which is kind of lazy. It was a very safe set. And sometimes when you see these kind of legacy bands like Purple, you look around the audience and you see younger people. So I'm thinking about, say, the Rolling Stones. Now, the Rolling Stones are different because they've got a big, broader appeal, much broader media presence because of the famous, reputations of Jagger in particular, which is not, is not replicated in Deep Purple. But they're kind of from the same era. They're still both very prominent bands in the 70s. Both, to their credit, have been producing quality content ever since. And of course, the Stones had a few years head start, of course. But they've both been really, really good bands. But when you see the Stones, and I just use the Stones as it just comes to mind, you see young adults in the audience. Not Last Night. There was an audience of 6,000 maybe, that are all growing old with the band. And you kind of think that when the band gives up, these people will stop going to gigs, or when these people stop going to gigs, the band will have to give up. Really, there's no young, I didn't see anyone who was kind of young last night as well, which is a bit of a shame. But it was a solid gig. They're a good band. If you get a chance to see them, if your expectations are that you want to hear the stuff they did with Gillan and not Coverdale, Gillan, Glover and Blackmore, but not Coverdale and Hughes, then, because I think Ian Gillan probably has refused to sing any lyrics that aren't his own. It's a real shame, really, because Burn, Stormbringer, Come Taste the Band, really good, solid albums, some fantastic material on there. And a nod to that era would be good, I think, for long-term Deep Purple fans. But clearly, Gillan isn't going to have any of that. If you want to see them, see a legacy band before they finally quit, definitely recommend it. Not the greatest gig ever. Bit of a reminder for me as to why I don't go to so many gigs these days. Anyway, that's my verdict on Deep Purple, supported by Blue Oyster Cult in Birmingham last night. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.